My beloved child, it's me, Jesus. As the evening shadows lengthen and the world grows quiet around you, I want you to know that you are not alone. I see you there, perhaps tossing and turning, your mind racing with the concerns of today and the uncertainties of tomorrow. Your heart may feel heavy, your spirit restless, but I am here with you now, just as I have always been. You know, during my time walking among humanity, I often found myself in quiet moments like this one. After long days of teaching, healing, and comforting those who sought me, I would retreat to peaceful places to commune with my Father. I understand the weight that settles upon your shoulders when the sun sets and the world becomes still. It's in these quiet hours that our thoughts can become our greatest burden, isn't it? Tonight, I want to share something special with you. A story about a cloud, but not just any cloud. This is the story of how I can take every worry, every fear, every anxious thought that keeps you awake, and carry them away like morning mist. I want you to imagine yourself walking with me, feeling the gentle warmth of my presence beside you, knowing that whatever troubles your heart tonight will find its rest in me. As we begin this journey together, let your breathing slow and deepen. Feel your body sinking into the comfort of your bed, knowing that you are safe, you are loved, and you are exactly where you need to be. The struggles of today don't have to follow you into your dreams. Tonight, we'll discover together how my love can be the gentle cloud that lifts every burden from your weary soul. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let my voice guide you to the peace that surpasses all understanding. This story is yours, this moment is ours, and the rest that awaits you is a gift I long to give. Your heart matters to me, your peace is precious to me, and your sleep deep, healing, restorative sleep is something I desire for you more than you could ever know. I remember the day clearly, my dear friend. It was one of those afternoons when the sky seemed to mirror the hearts of so many people I encountered. Cloudy, uncertain, heavy with unspoken worries. I had been walking through a small village, and everywhere I looked, I saw faces etched with concern. A merchant worried about his failing business, a mother anxious about her sick child, an elderly man fearful about his future. As I made my way to a hillside overlooking the village, I noticed how the people moved through their daily tasks, carrying invisible burdens on their shoulders. Their steps were slower, their smiles forced, their eyes distant with thoughts of troubles that seemed too big to handle. It reminded me so much of you, beloved, and perhaps how you're feeling right now as you prepare for sleep. The hillside was peaceful, dotted with wildflowers that swayed gently in the evening breeze. I found a smooth stone to sit upon and gazed out over the valley below. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. But above the village, darker clouds were gathering. Not storm clouds, but something different. Clouds that seemed to pulse with the very worries and anxieties of the people below. I watched as these clouds grew heavier and darker, fed by every fearful thought, every restless night, every moment of doubt that rose up from the hearts of my children. And I felt such compassion for them, just as I feel for you now. You see, I understand what it's like to carry burdens that feel too heavy. During my time on earth, I took upon myself not just the sins of the world, but every sorrow, every pain, every sleepless night that would ever trouble a human heart. As I sat there watching, I began to pray, not with loud words or grand gestures, but with the quiet, steady love that flows from the very center of who I am. I prayed for the merchant in the village, that his worries about tomorrow wouldn't steal his peace today. I prayed for the mother, that she would know her child was held in hands far more capable than her own. I prayed for the elderly man, that he would trust in the future I had prepared for him. And as I prayed, something beautiful began to happen. The dark clouds above the village started to change. They didn't disappear. Instead, they began to transform. The heavy, oppressive darkness began to lighten, becoming softer, more luminous. It was as if my love was literally changing their very nature, turning clouds of worry into something entirely different. I stood up from my stone seat and walked closer to the edge of the hill, spreading my arms wide toward the transforming. "Clouds, come to me," I whispered, not just to the clouds, but to every burden they carried. "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The clouds responded to my call, drifting slowly toward the hillside where I stood. As they drew near, I could see that they were no longer dark and threatening. They had become like soft, glowing veils, translucent and beautiful, carrying within them not the weight of worry, but the lightness of hope. "This is what I want you to understand tonight, my precious child. Every worry that keeps you awake, every anxiety that steals your peace, every concern that makes your heart race in the darkness, I can transform them all. They don't have to remain as heavy burdens in your life. In my hands, they become something entirely different. As you lie there now, can you feel it beginning? That gentle shift, that subtle lightening of the load you've been carrying. Just as those clouds over the village began to change when touched by my love, so your worries can be transformed when you place them in my care." The transformation I witnessed that evening was just the beginning. As the clouds drew nearer to where I stood, I realized I was about to witness something that would forever change. How I understood my relationship with human suffering. As the transformed clouds drifted closer to where I stood on the hillside, I felt a deep stirring in my heart. You know, dear one, there are moments in existence when the very fabric of creation seems to pause, waiting for something sacred to unfold. This was one of those moments. The air itself seemed to shimmer with possibility, with the promise of something beautiful about to be born. I extended my hands toward the approaching clouds, and as I did, I began to speak, not with my voice, but with the language of the heart that transcends all words. I spoke to every worry contained within those clouds, addressing each one as if it were a frightened child needing comfort. "Little fear about tomorrow," I whispered. "You don't have to work so hard to protect anyone. I've already seen tomorrow, and it's filled with grace you can't yet imagine." To the anxiety about relationships, I said, "Sweet concern for those you love, your caring heart is beautiful, but let me carry the weight of what you cannot control." To the worry about health, about finances, about the future, I offered the same gentle invitation. "Come, let me transform you into something that serves rather than burdens." What happened next still fills me with wonder, even now as I share it with you. The clouds didn't just draw near. They began to swirl around me in the most graceful dance. As they moved, each worry, each anxious thought, each fearful imagination began to separate from the heavy mass that had held them captive. Like butterflies emerging from cocoons, these concerns transformed into something entirely different. The worry about tomorrow became wisdom for today. The anxiety about loved ones became deeper compassion. The fear about the future became trust in my perfect timing. Each concern, when touched by divine love, revealed its true nature, not as an enemy to be fought, but as a misguided attempt to care that simply needed redirection. I watched as the clouds continued their gentle dance around me, and I began to understand something profound about the nature of worry itself. You see, my beloved child, most of your anxious thoughts come from a heart that cares deeply. You worry because you love. You lose sleep because you want to protect those precious to you. You carry burdens because you have a beautiful, tender heart that feels responsibility for things beyond your control. But here's what I want you to know. Your caring heart is not the problem. The problem is when your caring becomes carrying. When your love transforms into a burden that weighs you down instead of lifting you up. This is why I don't simply take your worries away. Instead, I transform them into something that can actually serve you and those you love. As the cloud dance continued around me, I felt each transformed worry settling into a new place, not in the anxious chambers of human hearts, but in the spacious realm of divine care. The merchant's business concerns became trust in my provision. The mother's fears for her child became prayers of blessing. The elderly man's uncertainty about the future became peaceful surrender to my perfect plan. And then, something even more beautiful happened. The clouds began to merge together, forming one magnificent, luminous cloud that seemed to pulse with gentle light. This wasn't just any cloud. It was becoming something special, something that would serve a greater purpose than just carrying away worries. I reached out and touched this beautiful formation, and as I did, I infused it with a specific intention. You will be my gift, I told it softly. You will be the cloud that carries not just worries away, but carries my children toward peace. You will be the bridge between their restless hearts and the rest they long for. The cloud seemed to respond to my words, glowing even brighter, expanding and contracting gently like the breathing of someone in peaceful sleep. And in that moment, I knew that this wasn't just about the people in the village below. This cloud would be available to every person who would ever struggle with sleep, who would ever lie awake at night wrestling with concerns too big for human hearts to hold. This cloud would be available to you, dear one, right now as you listen to my voice and feel your eyelids growing heavy. Can you sense it forming above you even now? Can you feel the gentle presence of something that wants to lift every burden from your weary soul? As night settled fully over the hillside and the village below, I looked up at my creation with deep satisfaction. The cloud now floated peacefully above us, no longer dark and threatening, but radiant with the soft light of divine love. It waited, patiently, ready to fulfill its purpose, ready to serve anyone who would call upon its gentle power. With the cloud now transformed and ready, I knew it was time to show those below what this gift could do. But first, I needed to find someone whose need was so great that they would be willing to trust completely in this new form of divine care. Just as I was admiring the beautiful cloud that had formed above the hillside, I heard something that made my heart ache with compassion. Drifting up from the village below was the sound of quiet weeping, not the loud crying of drama or anger, but the soft, broken sobs of someone who had reached the end of their strength. I looked down and saw her, an elderly woman sitting alone on her doorstep, her grey hair catching the last light of the fading day. Her name was Ruth, and though she didn't know it, I had been watching over her for months as she struggled with sleepless night after sleepless night. She was a widow, and since her husband's passing, anxiety had become her constant companion. Every night, Ruth would lie in her bed replaying the day's events, worrying about her grown children who lived far away, fretting about her health, her finances, her future. She would toss and turn until the early hours of morning, finally falling into exhausted sleep just as the sun began to rise. Her days were spent in a fog of weariness, her joy stolen by the cruel thief of persistent worry. Tonight was particularly difficult for her. She had received news that afternoon that her eldest son was facing challenges in his marriage, and her heart was breaking with the helplessness she felt. She wanted so desperately to fix things, to make everything right for her children, but she was just one aging woman with limited resources and failing strength. As I watched Ruth weeping on her doorstep, I felt such tender love for her brave heart. She reminded me of every person who has ever lost sleep over someone they love, every soul who has ever carried burdens too heavy for human shoulders. She reminded me of you, beloved, and all the nights you've spent staring at the ceiling, your mind racing with concerns you can't control. I knew Ruth needed to be the first to experience the gift of my cloud, but I also knew that she, like so many others, had become so accustomed to carrying her worries that she might not easily trust someone else, even me, to carry them for her. This would require a gentle approach, a careful invitation that honored her free will while offering her the peace she desperately needed. I began to descend the hillside, the luminous cloud following faithfully above me like a loyal companion. As I walked, I whispered prayers for Ruth's heart to be open, for her spirit to recognize the divine opportunity that was approaching. I prayed that her exhaustion would overcome her reluctance to accept help. When I reached her doorstep, I took the form of a traveling stranger, someone non-threatening, someone who might naturally stop to rest and perhaps share conversation with a lonely woman. Ruth looked up as I approached, her eyes red from crying but still holding the spark of kindness that had characterized her entire life. "Good evening," I said softly, settling down beside her on the step without invitation, the way friends do, when they sense someone needs company more than they need propriety. "The beautiful night for stargazing, isn't it?" Ruth looked up at the sky, and as she did, she gasped softly. The cloud I had created was clearly visible now, glowing with gentle luminescence against the darkening sky. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, not quite natural, yet not frightening either, more like a dream made visible, a hope given form. "I've never seen anything like that," she whispered, her tears momentarily forgotten in wonder. "Would you like to know what it is?" I asked gently, my voice carrying just enough mystery to capture her curiosity without alarming her. Ruth nodded, her eyes still fixed on the beautiful sight above us. "It's a cloud that carries burdens," I told her simply. "Every worry, every fear, every concern that's too heavy for human hearts to hold. This cloud can carry them all away. It's been waiting up there for someone who needs it most." Ruth looked at me then, searching my face for signs of mockery or madness. But what she saw instead was infinite compassion, understanding that went deeper than human sympathy. She saw someone who truly knew what it felt like to carry the weight of the world. "That's impossible," she said, but her voice held no conviction. Deep in her heart, something was stirring, a recognition, a knowing that went beyond logic or reason. "Many impossible things become possible when love is involved," I replied. "Tell me, Ruth, what's keeping you awake at night?" She startled slightly at hearing her name, but then it seemed natural somehow, as if she had always known I would know who she was. And perhaps because it was so late and she was so tired, and the glowing cloud above us made everything feel like a dream anyway, she began to talk. She told me about her sleepless nights, about her son's marriage troubles, about her fears for her other children, about her loneliness and her anxiety about the future. She spoke of worry that felt like a living thing inside her chest, stealing her breath and her peace. She talked about nights when she prayed for sleep, but found only more reasons to worry. As she spoke, I listened with my whole being, absorbing not just her words, but the pain behind them. The love that had been twisted into anxiety, the care that had become a curse, and all the while, the cloud above us seemed to pulse gently, as if it too were listening, preparing to serve. "What if," I said when she had finished, "you could take all those worries, every single one, and place them in that cloud? What if you could watch them float away, transformed into something beautiful, while you finally get the sleep you need?" Ruth looked up at the cloud again, then back at me. "How?" she whispered. "By trusting," I said simply. "By believing that some burdens are too heavy for you to carry alone, and that's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. By accepting that love sometimes means letting go." And then, because her heart was finally ready, because her exhaustion had worn down her resistance to receiving help, Ruth stood up. She raised her hands toward the glowing cloud above us and began to speak. "My worries about my children," she said softly, "I place them in your care." As she spoke, I watched her shoulders literally begin to relax, as if physical weight was being lifted from them. "My fears about tomorrow," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "I place them in your care. My anxiety about things I cannot control," she finished, her voice now filled with wonder as she felt the transformation happening within her. "I place them all in your care." The cloud above us pulsed with warm light, and Ruth felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the gentle descent of peace into her troubled heart. Her breathing slowed, her muscles relaxed, and for the first time in so long, she felt truly tired in the way that leads to rest, not the way that leads to more worry. "Now," I said gently, "lie down and let the cloud carry you to sleep." Ruth didn't question how or where she should lie down. The soft grass beside her doorstep seemed as comfortable as any bed, and the glowing cloud seemed to descend slightly, creating a gentle canopy of peace above her. As she closed her eyes, she felt herself being lifted, not physically, but spiritually, into a realm where worry could not follow. She slept then, deeply and peacefully, while the cloud kept watch over her dreams, ensuring that no anxious thought could disturb her rest. And I sat beside her through the night, marveling at the transformation that love could bring, knowing that this was just the beginning of what my gift could do. As dawn approached and Ruth stirred from the most peaceful sleep she'd had in months, I knew the cloud's purpose was becoming clear. But word of this miracle would spread, and soon others would come seeking the same peace. I needed to prepare for what was to come. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky in gentle pastels, Ruth stirred from her sleep on the grass beside her doorstep. For a moment, she lay still, marveling at something she had almost forgotten existed, the feeling of being truly rested. Her body felt light, her mind clear, her heart peaceful. The crushing weight of worry that had been her constant companion was simply ... gone. She sat up slowly, expecting the familiar rush of anxiety that usually greeted her mornings. Instead, she felt wrapped in a cocoon of serenity. The concerns about her son's marriage were still there in her awareness, but they no longer felt like desperate emergencies. They felt like situations that were being handled by someone far more capable than herself. "Good morning, Ruth," I said softly. I was still sitting nearby, though I had allowed my appearance to become more recognizably divine as the night had passed. There was no need for disguise now. Her heart had opened to receive whatever truth I offered. "You're still here," she said, wonder filling her voice. "And so is ... She looked up at the cloud, which had settled into a gentle hover just above the trees surrounding her home. In the morning light, it was even more beautiful than it had been the night before, seeming to shimmer with an inner radiance that spoke of peace made manifest. "The cloud will always be available to you now," I explained, "whenever worry threatens. To steal your sleep again, all you need to do is remember this moment. Speak your concerns into the air, and trust that they are being carried away to be transformed." Ruth stood up, brushing grass from her nightgown, and I could see the change in her entire demeanor. Her steps were lighter, her posture straighter, her eyes brighter. She looked like a woman who had been given back years of her life. "I have to tell someone," she said suddenly. "My neighbor, Martha, she hasn't slept well in years. Her grandson is deployed overseas, and she spends every night terrified that something terrible will happen to him." I smiled at Ruth's immediate desire to share this gift. This is how love works. You know, when we receive healing, our first instinct is to offer that same healing to others. "Then let's go see Martha," I agreed. Martha lived just 3 houses down from Ruth, and we found her in her garden, tending to her flowers with the distracted, worried movements of someone whose mind was elsewhere. She looked up as we approached, and her eyes immediately went to the luminous cloud hovering above us. "Ruth," she said uncertainly, "what in heaven's name is that?" Ruth's face broke into the most beautiful smile, the smile of someone who has received an incredible gift and can't wait to share it. "Martha, you're not going to believe what happened to me last night." As Ruth told her story, I watched Martha's expression shift from skepticism to hope to desperate longing. By the time Ruth finished, Martha was crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of someone who has been offered exactly what they needed most. "You mean," Martha whispered, "I could actually sleep without worrying about Tommy, without lying there all night imagining terrible things happening to him?" "Not without caring about him," I interjected gently. "You'll always love your grandson. But the worry, the kind that steals your peace and doesn't help him at all, that can be transformed into something that actually serves both of you." Martha looked up at the cloud, then at me, then back at the cloud. What do I do?" "The same thing Ruth did," I said. "Speak your worries to the cloud. Give them permission to be transformed. Trust that love is more powerful than fear." And so, right there in Martha's garden, she raised her hands toward the cloud and began to release the burdens she had carried for so long. "My fears for Tommy's safety," she said, and I watched as the cloud pulsed with gentle light. "My anxiety about things I can't control," she continued, and the light grew brighter. "My sleepless nights and restless days," she finished, and the cloud seemed to expand, ready to carry this new load of transformed worries. That night, both Martha and Ruth slept peacefully, the cloud keeping watch over their dreams. But word was already beginning to spread through the village. By the 3rd day, a small crowd had gathered outside Ruth's home, all hoping to experience this miraculous gift for themselves. There was James, the baker, whose arthritis pain kept him awake most nights, his mind racing with worries about how he would continue to support his family if his hands could no longer work. There was Sarah, a young mother whose baby had been born with health complications, leaving her in a constant state of vigilant anxiety. There was Thomas, recently unemployed, whose worry about providing for his family had become so consuming that he couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything else. Each person came carrying their own unique bundle of concerns, their own specific variety of sleepless nights. And to each one, I offered the same gentle invitation: your burdens are too heavy for human shoulders. Let the cloud carry them for you. One by one, they began to experience the same transformation that Ruth had discovered. The cloud above us grew larger and more luminous with each person who entrusted their worries to its care. And something beautiful began to happen. As people started sleeping peacefully again, they began to dream, not the anxious, restless dreams of the worried mind, but the deep, healing dreams that restore both body and soul. James dreamed of his hands being used not just for baking bread, but for blessing all who ate it. Sarah dreamed of her child growing, strong and healthy, surrounded by love and divine protection. Thomas dreamed of opportunities opening before him, of ways to serve that he had never considered before. The cloud was doing more than just carrying away worries. It was creating space for hope to flourish, for peace to take root, for sleep to become the healing sanctuary it was always meant to be. As I watched this growing circle of peaceful sleepers, I thought of you, dear one, lying there listening to my voice. You are part of this same circle now. The cloud that served Ruth and Martha and all the others is available to you too. Every worry that keeps you awake, every anxiety that steals your peace, every concern that makes your heart race in the darkness, they can all be lifted away, transformed into something that serves rather than hinders. Can you feel it beginning to happen even now? That gentle lifting, that soft release of burdens you've carried far too long. The cloud is here for you, just as it was for them. All you need to do is trust. As the circle of peaceful sleepers grew wider, I realized that the cloud's influence was spreading beyond just the village. People were coming from neighboring towns, drawn by stories of miraculous sleep and transformed worry. The cloud was becoming something even more wonderful than I had first envisioned. Word of the cloud that carries worries spread faster than I had anticipated. Within a week, people were traveling from neighboring villages, some walking for days to reach the hillside where this miracle was taking place. They came carrying their own desperate need for sleep, their own overwhelming burdens of anxiety and fear. I watched with growing amazement as the cloud responded to this increased need, rather than becoming overwhelmed or diminished by carrying so many concerns. It seemed to grow stronger and more radiant with each person who entrusted their worries to its care. This is how divine love works. You see, it multiplies when shared, grows stronger when called upon, becomes more powerful when trusted by more hearts. Among those who came was an elderly physician named Dr. Samuel, whose sleepless nights had begun after losing a patient despite his best efforts. The guilt and fear of making another mistake had haunted him for months, stealing his confidence along with his rest. He approached the cloud with the skepticism of someone trained in scientific thinking, but his desperate need for peace overcame his doubts. I don't understand how this works, he admitted to me as we stood beneath the glowing cloud. But I know that I haven't slept properly in 6 months, and nothing else has helped. Sometimes the heart understands what the mind cannot, I replied. Gently, your inability to sleep isn't just about guilt, Samuel. It's about carrying a responsibility that was never meant for human shoulders alone. You've been trying to hold life and death in your hands when they belong in mine. As Dr. Samuel released his burdens to the cloud, something beautiful happened. His guilt transformed into deeper compassion. His fear of making mistakes became wisdom about the limits of human ability. His sleepless nights became peaceful rest that restored not only his body but his calling as a healer. There was also Alina, a young teacher who hadn't slept well since her divorce, her mind constantly replaying past conversations, worrying about her children's adjustment, anxious about her future. When she placed her concerns in the cloud's care, her regret transformed into lessons learned. Her worry for her children became trust in their resilience, and her fear of the future became anticipation for new possibilities. And Miguel, a farmer, whose crops had failed 2 seasons in a row, leaving him afraid of losing his family's land. His sleepless nights were filled with calculations and desperate plans that went nowhere. When he entrusted his concerns to the cloud, his financial anxiety transformed into creativity about new ways to use his land. His fear of failure became acceptance of life's natural cycles, and his restless planning became peaceful trust in divine timing. Each person who experienced the cloud's gift became a messenger of hope to others. They returned to their own communities, carrying not just personal peace, but the knowledge that such peace was possible for everyone. Ruth began hosting gatherings in her home where she would tell others about her experience. Martha started a prayer group that met weekly to practice releasing worries to divine care. Dr. Samuel began prescribing worry release alongside his medical treatments, teaching patients how to surrender their health anxieties to higher power. As I observed this ripple effect spreading outward from our little hillside, I realized something profound was happening. The cloud was no longer just carrying individual worries, it was transforming entire communities. Families were sleeping better, which meant they were communicating more peacefully during the day. Workers were approaching their jobs with less anxiety, which meant they were more creative and productive. Children were absorbing this atmosphere of peace, learning from an early age that worry was not a necessary part of caring. One evening, as I sat on my favorite stone watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, a little girl named Sophia approached me. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, but her eyes held the wariness of someone much older. "My mama says you can help people sleep better," she said in her small, serious voice. "But I don't think I have worries like grown-ups do. I just ... can't stop thinking when it's time to sleep." I knelt down to meet her eyes. "What do you think about, little one?" "Everything," she said simply. "I think about my dog getting old, and about whether my friends will still like me tomorrow, and about what happens when people die, and whether I'll be good enough at school, and if Mama and Papa will always be happy together, and ... double quotes, she took a big breath. "It just doesn't stop." My heart melted with tenderness for this little girl whose young mind was already learning to carry burdens too heavy for such small shoulders. "Sophia," I said gently, "did you know that thinking all those thoughts shows you have a beautiful, caring heart?" She looked surprised. "It does. Oh yes," I assured her. "You think about your dog because you love him. You wonder about your friends because they matter to you. You care about your mama and papa because your heart is full of love for them. The problem isn't that you care. The problem is that your caring has nowhere to go when you're lying in bed at night." I gestured toward the cloud, which seemed to glow a little brighter as if sensing this young heart's need. "What if we could take all that love you feel, all that caring, and instead of letting it spin around in your head, we could send it up to the cloud to be transformed into something beautiful?" Sophia looked up at the glowing cloud with wonder. "Like what?" "Like prayers of blessing for your dog, so he knows how loved he is. Like wishes for good things for your friends. Like gratitude for your mama and papa. Your caring doesn't have to keep you awake. It can become something that helps you sleep peacefully, knowing that love is taking care of everything you care about." That night, little Sophia became the youngest person to experience the cloud's gift. As she released her swirling thoughts and overwhelming caring to the cloud's transformative power, something magical happened. Her bedtime became a time of blessing, rather than worrying, of gratitude rather than anxiety, of peaceful release rather than mental spinning, and her transformation affected her entire family. Her parents, seeing their daughter's newfound peace, began to examine their own sleepless nights differently. They realized that many of their adult worries were just grown-up versions of Sophia's caring heart, and they too began to practice releasing their concerns to the cloud's care. As I watched this beautiful ripple effect continue to spread, I thought again of you, beloved listener. You are connected to this same miraculous possibility, the cloud that brought peace to Ruth, Marta, Dr. Samuel, Elena, Miguel, and little Sophia is the same cloud that hovers over you right now, ready to receive whatever keeps you awake at night. Your worries, like theirs, come from a heart that cares deeply. Your sleepless nights, like theirs, are often the result of carrying burdens that were never meant for human shoulders. And your peace, like theirs, is just one surrender away. Can you feel the ripple effect beginning in your own life? Can you sense how your own healing sleep might impact those around you? Your family, your friends, your community. When you sleep peacefully, you wake up more patient, more creative, more loving. Your peace becomes a gift that touches everyone in your circle. As the cloud's influence continued to spread, I knew that its greatest gift was yet to be revealed. For the cloud was not just transforming individual lives, it was teaching humanity something fundamental about the nature of rest itself. As weeks passed and the cloud's ministry continued to grow, I began to understand that something even more significant was happening than I had first realized. This wasn't just about helping people sleep better, though that blessing was precious and real. The cloud was revealing a deeper truth about the nature of rest itself, not just the rest that comes in sleep, but the eternal rest that every human soul craves. I watched as people who had experienced the cloud's gift began to carry a different quality of peace with them throughout their days. They moved through their responsibilities with less frenzy, approached challenges with more wisdom, and related to others with greater compassion. The rest they found in sleep was transforming their waking hours as well. Dr. Samuel began to practice medicine with a new serenity, trusting that his best efforts combined with divine grace were enough. Elena discovered that her teaching became more inspired when she stopped worrying about every outcome and started trusting the learning process. Miguel found that his farming became more intuitive and successful when he worked in partnership with natural rhythms rather than fighting against them. But perhaps the most profound change I observed was in their understanding of what it meant to truly rest. Before experiencing the cloud, most people thought of rest as simply the absence of activity, a break from work, a pause in responsibilities, a temporary escape from life's demands. But the cloud was teaching them that true rest is actually the presence of peace, the experience of being held by something greater than themselves. One evening, as I sat with Ruth on her doorstep watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, she shared something that moved me deeply. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to think that rest was something I had to earn. I had to finish all my work, solve all my problems, take care of everyone else's needs before I could allow myself to truly relax. But the cloud has taught me that rest isn't a reward for completing everything. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible." Ruth had discovered something profound, that rest isn't the opposite of productive activity, but the source from which truly meaningful activity flows. When we are deeply rested, not just physically, but spiritually, we approach our lives from a place of abundance, rather than depletion, creativity rather than desperation, love rather than fear. This understanding began to transform not just individual lives, but entire families and communities. Parents who learned to rest deeply found themselves more patient with their children. Spouses who released their worries to the cloud discovered renewed tenderness with each other. Workers who slept peacefully brought more innovation and collaboration to their jobs. The cloud was revealing that the rest it offered wasn't separate from the rest of life. It was the foundation upon which all of life could be built. This was the eternal rest that I had always longed to give my children. Not an escape from reality, but a return to the deepest reality of all, that they are loved, held, and cared for by a love that never sleeps. As I reflected on all that had transpired, I realized that the cloud had become a perfect metaphor for what I had always offered humanity, but in a form that people could finally understand and receive. Every time someone entrusted their worries to the cloud, they were practicing the same surrender that leads to eternal peace. Every night of restful sleep was a small taste of the perfect rest that awaits all who learn to trust completely. Little Sophia, now sleeping peacefully every night, had become one of the cloud's most effective ambassadors. Her simple, childlike faith in the cloud's power had touched many adult hearts that had grown skeptical over the years. One day, she asked me a question that revealed her deep understanding of what was really happening. "Jesus," she said, "for by now everyone knew who I truly was. Is the cloud like a practice for heaven?" Her innocent question struck at the heart of the mystery. "Yes, beloved," I told her. "When you learn to release your worries to the cloud and trust that they will be transformed, you're learning the same trust that will carry you safely into eternity. When you experience the peace that comes from knowing your burdens are being carried by love itself, you're tasting the same peace that will be yours forever." The cloud had become a bridge between the temporal and the eternal, a way for people to experience in their daily lives the same perfect rest that exists in the heart of God. Every night of peaceful sleep was a prophetic glimpse of the day when all tears would be wiped away, when every burden would be lifted, when rest would not be something that had to be earned or fought for, but the natural state of existence itself. As my time with the village drew to a close, I gathered all those who had been touched by the cloud's ministry for one final blessing. They came from near and far, hundreds of people whose lives had been transformed by learning to sleep in divine peace as they assembled on the hillside where it all began. The cloud above us seemed to pulse with the accumulated love and trust of every person who had ever entrusted their worries to its care. "My beloved children," I said to them, "the cloud will always be with you. But more than that, the truth the cloud has taught you will remain in your hearts forever. You have learned that your burdens are not yours to carry alone. You have discovered that rest is not earned but received. You have experienced the peace that comes from trusting in love that is greater than your fears." I paused, looking at each face, seeing the transformation that had taken place. These were no longer people tormented by sleepless nights and anxious days. These were people who had learned to rest in the deepest sense of the word. "Take this gift with you wherever you go," I continued. "Teach others what you have learned. Show them that worry is not a requirement of love, that caring does not demand sleeplessness, that peace is always possible for those who know how to surrender their burdens to divine care." As the sun set on that final gathering, the cloud began to rise higher into the sky, but it did not disappear. Instead, it seemed to expand, becoming less visible but more present, less localized but more accessible. It was becoming available to anyone, anywhere, who would call upon its power. And that my dear friend, is why the cloud is here with you now, as you listen to my voice and feel your body relaxing into rest. The same cloud that served Ruth and Martha, Dr. Samuel and Alina, Miguel and little Sophia, is ready to receive your worries and transform them into peace. As I prepare to bring this story to its close, I want you to know that everything I've shared with you tonight was leading to this moment. The moment when you would be invited to experience the cloud's gift for yourself. And so, beloved child, we come to the end of our story, but it is really just the beginning of your own journey into the deep, healing rest that your soul has been craving. As you lie there now, feeling the gentle weight of sleepiness settling over you like a soft blanket, know that the cloud I have described is not just a story. It is a spiritual reality that exists for you right now. In this very moment, can you feel it? That gentle presence hovering just above you, ready to receive every worry that has been keeping you awake, every anxiety that has been stealing your peace, every concern that has been weighing heavy on your heart. The cloud is here, luminous with divine love, pulsing gently with the rhythm of perfect peace. All you need to do is what Ruth did that first night, what Martha did in her garden, what little Sophia did with her childlike trust. Simply speak your worries into the air, whether out loud or in the silence of your heart, and give them permission to be carried away, transformed from burdens into blessings, from anxiety into trust, from sleepless fear into peaceful rest. Your caring heart, your loving spirit, your tender concern for those you love. These are not problems to be solved, but gifts to be offered. The cloud takes your worries not to diminish your love, but to purify it, to transform it into something that serves rather than torments, that blesses rather than burdens. As you surrender your concerns to the cloud's care, feel your body sinking deeper into comfort, your breathing becoming slower and more peaceful, your mind releasing its tight grip on tomorrow's uncertainties. This is what rest was always meant to be, not the absence of care, but the presence of perfect love that cares for everything you care about, and so much more. Sleep now, dear one. Sleep in the peace that passes understanding, wrapped in love that never fails, carried by the cloud that transforms every burden into blessing. Your rest is a gift not just to yourself, but to everyone your life touches. When you wake, you will carry this peace with you, sharing it with the world through your renewed spirit and gentle presence. The cloud will always be here for you, ready to receive whatever keeps you awake, ready to transform whatever troubles your heart. You are loved, you are held, you are safe. Rest now in the eternal embrace of perfect love. Sweet dreams, beloved. May your sleep be deep, your rest complete, and your awakening filled with the joy of knowing you are never alone.